Hi guys, welcome to our first episode of Learning 3D, or 3D 101 as I call it. As some of you know, Bobby is doing a series called Smack 101 that will focus on the very beginner, and it'll teach the guys that really have never flown before, that are in their very, very early stages of learning to fly, how to set up their helicopter, how to learn to hover, tips about how to go about practicing the hovering, nose in, sideways, tail in, and covers also how to learn to fly forward and maybe do a flip or so. So for this series called 3D, Learning 3D, what I'm going to teach you is how to learn to fly 3D. And we will have one episode every month or so. Every episode will focus on a new section of how to teach you guys to learn 3D. Of course, this is the very first episode, so we have to start from the very, very beginning. And what I'm going to teach you today is some very, very basic stuff. And I know that a lot of you will find this kind of disappointing, maybe a little bit boring, but it is very important. It is very, very important that you guys master your basics before we move on to teach you how to do 3D. So for this episode, we will talk about a little bit about setups again, very briefly. Then we will go ahead and talk about the basics and what I believe that you guys should know before we venture into full 3D. On the next episode, we will start talking about maneuvers, and what we will do is we will show you one maneuver per episode. We will start with funnels and hurricanes and stuff like that, and we'll progress over and we'll switch and do pyro flips, and then we will show pirouetting maneuvers and so forth. So every episode will focus on a new maneuver, and as I'm teaching you these maneuvers, I'm going to also teach you some transitions so that you can start putting all this together eventually. So with that being said, welcome to SmackTalk RC, Learning 3D Chapter number 1. Right guys, I know we've discussed setups many times in the past, but it is very important to have a properly set up helicopter before you start doing any kind of 3D. Again, it's very, very important. I'm going to show you my T-Rex 700 here, and as you can see, what I do before I go do any kind of 3D or any hard 3D flight is I go over everything. I look at the head of the helicopter, I look at the servos, make sure the servo wheels are fine, they're not stripped, make sure everything's centered the way it should be. I inspect the tail very quickly, make sure my tail push rod is centered and it's not crooked, make sure there's no loose bolts around the horizontal stabilizer area, check the tail blades, make sure they're free of any defects or cracks, as well as the tail pitch slider, and everything that has to do with just being cautious and maintaining your helicopter. As you look at the head, you need to make sure everything's centered, everything's set up at the right angles, everything else. Engine, very important. Your engine needs to be pretty much tuned the best it can. And the reason for that is that as you start doing some of these 3D maneuvers, you're going to be demanding a lot of power out of the engine, especially if you haven't mastered your collective management skills. So make sure that your engine is tuned properly, that it's pulling, that it's got good power. Episode number 1 of SmackTalk RC covers engine tuning in detail, so I suggest that you watch that if you haven't done so already. So so that's for helicopter. Make sure your helicopter is set up properly. Make sure your gyro is set up right. Make sure your governor is set up right. Head speed is very important. You need to make sure that your head speed is correct and is holding as you do these maneuvers. Just basic stuff, but it needs to be taken care of. Now I'm going to show you my own setup on my radio. We're going to look at the my DX7 SC program right here. And as you can see, I'm running 25% expo on the aileron and on the elevator. As you can see, rudder has no expo. So on the next screen, we'll see here that all the servos have obviously the right orientation. As you get to the sub trim menu here, you'll see that all my sub trims are at 0. There's no sub trims on my helicopter. My endpoints menu, I have a couple of adjustments for interaction there. I have 41 gain on my gyro on the Spartan Quark. And then these are my swatch values right here, my hold setup, as well as my throttle curve. Now my throttle curve is pretty much a pretty simple curve, as you can see, and then my throttle idle up 1 as well as idle up 2, stunt 1 and stunt 2 are at 100% flat because I'm running the Rev Max Rev limiter. Pitch curves are not touched. I leave those alone. Nothing special about the pitch curves. Revo mix has to be disabled, of course. Make sure it is disabled, otherwise you will have gyro problems. And these are my gear, my mixes for my governor, and of course my timer. So you need to make sure your radio is set up properly. You have the right settings for your gyro, the right settings for your governor. The reason why my pitch curves are default is because I try to do everything mechanically on the helicopter. I try not to mess much with the radio because it makes it easier. Every time you crash and you rebuild your helicopter, you know you don't have to mess with different curves on your pitch, different points. You just leave it flat. You make sure that your mechanical setup is correct. And also the linear pitch curve, I found that it works better for my style of 3D. I do a lot of hard 3D on the deck, but every once in a while I take it big and I do smooth, big flying. And the more linear it is, the better, because I want the collective stick to feel the same whether I am on a quarter stick or 3/4 stick or around center stick. I want the same feel on the helicopter regardless of where I'm at on the left hand side. So I hope this was helpful, and we're going to move on and talk about basics now. Okay, we're going to talk about basics now. And at this point, I assume that you're very comfortable hovering right side up in all orientations, tail in, nose in, as well as sideways with the nose to the right and the nose to the left. I'm also assuming that you're very comfortable doing forward flight right side up, left hand turns as well as right side turns in complete control. So if you're not comfortable with that, please go back and practice that before you move on. Next thing is we're going to teach you how to hover upside down in all orientations. This is my T-Rex 700 here. So the first thing you do is obviously you need to practice this in the simulator before you venture out to the field and do it with your model. If you're not 100% comfortable in the simulator, please do not try this with your helicopter until you are. But once you feel that you're ready for this, take your helicopter out to the field, you put it up into a hover, tail in, and then the easiest way to transition and to invert it is to give it a little bit of 4 elevator, doing a flip. So 4 elevator and transition to the negative side and do a nose in hover, upside down. You do need to master this orientation. A lot of people take this for granted, but you do have to master that. Tail in as well. So what you do is you turn it around like it's shown here. You pull back elevator and you go positive to negative, and you hold it there, tail in, invert it. Again, very important orientation. Do not take this for granted. You do need to master this. After you're done with this and you're comfortable with both, you need to learn sideways. So you take the helicopter back into an inverted hover and you turn the nose around. Okay, we're going to go ahead and freeze this frame here. The easiest way to do this is what you do is, instead of positioning your body like this, looking at the helicopter sideways, is you turn your body around like this. And now your brain thinks that the helicopter is nose in when it's actually sideways. Or if you're more comfortable with tail in, you go like this, looking at the helicopter like this. Your brain thinks is actually tail in instead of sideways. Same with the other direction. Go to the other side, same story here. You stand like this, but instead of doing this, you stand like that. Now your brain thinks is tail in. But if you're more comfortable with nose in, what you do is you stand like this. And you look at the helicopter like that. And that's just fooling your brain into thinking you're tail in or nose in instead of sideways. And as you get comfortable with that, you start turning your body around slowly until you're facing the helicopter. So that is very important, hovering upside down in all orientations. And of course, once you've mastered that, then you need to learn how to fly inverted forward, as well as inverted backwards, as well as right side up backwards. So again, this is important. Backwards flight, right side up, definitely needs to be mastered. Inverted backwards, upside down needs to be mastered. And finally, inverted forward needs to be mastered. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the field now, and I'm going to give you some pointers on how to teach yourself how to learn these different orientations. All right, guys, I'm going to show you how to learn your basics. And by basics, I mean learn to hover, invert it in all orientations, as well as right side up. As I showed you earlier, there's really nothing much you can do, I can do to teach you how to hover inverted. This is something that you got to practice in the simulator and kind of get comfortable with before you go out to the field and do it with your own helicopter. As far as backwards flying, the first thing I recommend to learn backwards is, since you're comfortable with nose in hover, first thing you do is you get the helicopter in a nice and steady nose in hover, and then you push back back cyclic, move the helicopter away from you, and then you stop. Change the tail around, move the helicopter back towards you, and then you stop. That teaches you the orientation to fly backwards before you actually venture into doing circuits. Another way to do it is you put it this way, you push backwards away from you to the right. You stop, change the tail, push backwards again towards you, making sure I'm in idle up there. You can continue that way. Stop the helicopter, turn the tail again, come back to center. Once you're comfortable with these moves and you can fly backwards doing this at the field and on the simulator, then you can venture to go a little bit higher, and then you can start actually a circuit. What I recommend is learning one direction first. So I'm going to go counterclockwise. So I push back. As you can see on my sticks, when you fly backwards, your left stick, meaning collective and rudder, remains the same. I'm going left, I'm using left rudder, and I'm using positive collective to hold it up. However, the right stick is completely backwards. I'm using right aileron instead of left aileron to turn it to the left, and I'm using forward elevator to keep it from falling instead of backwards elevator. So again, nothing much here other than something that you have to practice in the simulator. What I always recommend is just to have a bailout plan when you do these things. And a bailout plan when you fly backwards is forward elevator and opposite aileron. So if I'm going that way and I get in trouble, I go that way with forward elevator and left aileron, I stabilize it and I get back in control. Inverted backwards. Okay, now we're changing everything here. Now we have to be inverted. So as I explained before, you need to be comfortable with inverted hover in all orientations. So if you're going to fly inverted backwards, you get the helicopter nose in like this, and you push forward elevator, move it away from you. Then you stop, change the tail, get it tail in, and bring it towards you. And this is actually really good practice before you actually venture into backwards inverted. Then you get it sideways like this, push forward elevator, fly it inverted backwards that way. And you stop it, change the tail, and you fly it inverted backwards this way. And once you're really comfortable with that, then again, same deal. You want to go ahead and venture into backwards inverted. You take it a little high. And an easy entry into this is back elevator into what I call a tail stand, and then you feet negative, and you enter your backwards flight, inverted. See, I'm at a comfortable one mistake high of about 70 feet right here. When you fly backwards inverted, your tail is reversed, meaning you have to feet right tail on a left turn. Your elevator is the same as when you fly forward, right side up. Back elevator, climbs, forward elevator, dives. And your aileron is backwards also. So you got backwards aileron, backwards tail, and your elevator is the same. So again, bailout plan. For this, a good bailout plan would be to use more tail in the direction you're going. So for example, if I'm leaning too deep, let's let it come around here a little bit. If I'm leaning too deep into this turn, using right aileron, left turn, if I'm leaning too deep, I use more right tail. And that is going to cost me to climb. So that's a good bell out strategy there. Finally, invert it forward. So we flip it. And the way I recommend practicing for this is same we did before, only this time you're hovering tail in. You push back elevator, move it away from you. Get it out there, you stabilize it, turn it, and then back elevator towards you. So this is teaching you how to fly upside down forward by using the associations of the movements that you already know, because you already know how to hover nose in and tail in. Then you go that way, for example, and then you push, same deal, back elevator, travel over that way. You stop it, you come this way, more back elevator, come this way, and you stop it. And once you're done with that, same deal, take it up a little higher, and then start flying upside down. Upside down is probably one of the easiest, because even though your collective is reversed and your tail is reversed, for some reason it seems easier for a lot of people. I'm turning left and I'm using left aileron the same way I do it when I fly right side up. My elevator is backwards, meaning I have to feed a little bit of forward elevator to keep it in the air. Finally, once you learn all this, you want to be able to do all these maneuvers in complete control in every direction. So once you're really comfortable, then what you do is you start your backwards flying, and you try to do figure eights, where you do one that way, you come center towards you, and then you go that way. That was a little ugly right there. And then you fly center towards you. Then you flip it, and then you do the same thing upside down, forward and backwards. You have to learn to go that way. And then when it comes towards you, you go the other way. It's a little windy day today, so. And then finally, of course, you want to do the same thing forward invert it. So you go that way, forward invert it. You make your left turn. And then you make your right turn. So, as I said before, it is imperative that before moving into hard 3D, you guys master these maneuvers. You need to have complete control over your helicopter, upside down as well as right side up, hover in all orientations, and be able to fly forwards as well as backwards, right side up and invert it in complete control before we can move on to some hard 3D. I hope these tips were useful. It's actually very surprising that I see that a lot of people really bypassed and skipped their basics, and they started doing TikToks and wall of deaths and all kinds of crazy stuff without mastering their basics. So while I was at the field, I asked my co-host Chicken Wing to ask a few people if they learned their basics. And most of them said no.
How you doing? This is Chicken Wing. Thanks to my bestest buddy down there, Mr. Earl, which I'm now nicknaming him Nervous Nelly because he shakes when he flies. We're going to ask people if they learn the basics of 3D flight before they started doing TikToks and stuff.
This guy, he's flying.
Excuse me, Ralph. Did you learn the basics of 3D flight before you started doing all this crazy stuff you're doing now?
Yeah, probably. I can't remember. I'm old.
Well, you know, you've really gotten pretty good since the last year.
Oh, thank you. Who are you going to ask?
Nervous Nelly Earl. We have to bust his balls. Because he's the one that gave me the name Chicken Wing. So this is Nervous Nelly.
I didn't give you that name.
Yes, you did, you bastard. We'd like to know if you learned the basics of 3D flight before you start doing all that crazy shit.
I don't do crazy.
Oh, yes, you do. I can testify to that. We're out here today doing it.
I learned a little of the basics.
Who taught you?
The guy with the camera.
Oh, Mr. Big?
Yeah, Mr. Big.
Good. Must be nice. Excuse me, lips! You just love losing them lips, don't you? I bet you go through like about 55 gallons of chap lips every year.
I do. How about you?
I don't use chapstick. I'm naturally sweat. When you started first flying 3D, did you do any of the basics yet?
No.
Well, we knew that because you crashed that little thing down there.
I could hover upside down, nose in, and that was really it.
Oh, you're getting big.
It's big.
Phew, you're too big for me.
So, am I?
Oh, yeah, I don't think I can handle you anymore.
So this is it for today's episode of SmackTalk RC, Learning 3D Chapter 1. I hope you guys enjoy this. Please stay tuned, download Chapter 2 of Learning 3D, where I'm going to go ahead and teach you guys how to do funnels and hurricanes. Funnels, also known as pie dishes in Europe. And I'm going to teach you some transitions on how to get into these maneuvers, so it should be a lot of fun. And the more episodes we do of Learning 3D, the more interesting it's going to get, because we're going to get into more in-depth maneuvers, more difficult maneuvers, more technical maneuvers. These episodes should last anywhere between 10 and 15 minutes. Since this is the very first episode and we're talking about basics, this obviously is running a little longer, but expect these to last about 15 minutes overall total time. So again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Hi guys, this is Bert, and we're here at the Orlando Torches Field. We're going to go ahead and bust race chicken wings here. Excuse me, sir.
Shut the f*** up.
Excuse me, sir.
I'm going to kill you.
Did you learn to do your basics when you were learning 3D? Why not?
I'm too stupid.
Huh?
I'm not going to get the thing in the air. Shut up.
Are you going to do some crack with this one?
No.
What model is this? Flobberless?
Yeah.
Why flobberless?
Some big Mr. Huge guy made me do it.
So no basics for you, huh? Just TikToks.
Just
Do you remember how to do some forward flight, like figure eights?
No, not at all.
You forgot that too?
Yeah.
What happened?
It's another dirt nap by Ray.
What did you do?
Nothing. I was going flying backwards, doing a roll. All of a sudden, just went.
You're trying to crack too much?
No crack.
All right.
It looks like a normal crash to me. Not bad. You got plenty of parts.
No shit.
I just gave you your parts back too.
Yeah. Styling.